Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Lawyers and Mediators International Show and Podcast from instantmediations.com. It's where we discuss law and conflict resolution topics to educate both professionals and everyday people. My name is Mac Pierre. I'm an attorney, mediator, and arbitrator, and I'm credentialed to do mediations in the state of Texas and Florida.
I am Natalia Olowska Pierre of Instant Mediations. I am based in Warsaw, Poland. I am an advocate, mediator, and arbitrator. And today with me and Mac,
Thomas Giglione. Thank you, Mac, Natalia, for inviting me back for another session of Instant Mediations. And today I'm going to be talking about chasing today's headlines to create conflict resolution role plays.
Awesome. And Thomas, this is part of the series we're doing with you that is called Current Events and Conflict Resolution with Thomas G. Giglione. Mm-hmm. And so, Thomas, first question is, what do you mean when you say in today's topic, chasing today's headlines to create conflict resolution role plays?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Mac. What I meant by that was, we obviously use role plays as training content, and I see a lot of mediators still using the same content from 10 years ago. So it's really good to have fresh material that is consistent with what's happening in today's time. So the last episode we talked about mediator creating a niche. So my niche 10 years ago is different to my niche now. So now I'm involved with more creating role plays specific to my niche. So my niche now is NFTs and art disputes and, those types of areas. And so I'm looking at headlines specific for art, specific for NFTs. So I'm kind of chasing headlines that are consistent to my niche, if that explains it a little bit.
It does. Thank you so much. And how and why do you use these pseudo-realistic role plays? How do you find them interesting? How does it help other people?
Thank you, Natalia. Well, obviously, as I mentioned, it's for teaching. I use it for teaching mostly, but I've also used it for preparing my own students here at Hanoi Law University to win a gold medal in a mediation competition, where I specifically designed role plays for them to prepare for the mediation competition in Singapore, where they beat out about 18 other law faculties. So it's basically for developing course content and also for promoting your own mediation training services. For example, you want to create content, just like you are creating content here as a podcast. It's also a way for creating content to promote your specific niche, your expertise in that type of mediation.
Okay, so Thomas, back in the day when I was getting trained to be a mediator, I was participating, doing the exact same things you're talking about, right? Role playing. And I still remember in detail some of the stories that we would go through and the different roles I had to play, whether it was a mediator role or the petitioner role or the defendant role. So in your experience, are these role plays, have they proven to be effective? Because they were effective for me, but how do you experience that?
Well, yeah, there's a lot of literature on that. And if you want, I could share that later on with you on the effectiveness. I believe it was Ebner and Efron, 2005. They stated in a survey of mediation teachers in 2009, it's a little bit dated. They did a survey with mediators, and it was shown that it was mostly highly regarded teaching method by 98% of the respondents. 96% of the respondents shared that they utilize simulations frequently or very frequently. And there was another study in 2010 by Corsi that proved that. Also, I didn't know this. I did a little research on this before this podcast. There in New York City and in Israel, it's mandatory that part of the mediation training that they do role plays. And that that data is about 5 years old, so I'm sure that's spread out throughout the world. So mediation centers are, and also governments now are requiring it, and I think it's more of it will be a growing requirement for to obtain a mediation certificate.
This is awesome. And I need to tell you that as a part of our Florida mediation training, me and Mark, we also did some role plays. This is mandatory there. And I remember one example in family law mediation that we had there. Outside of the scope of the role play that we were given by our trainers, the participants with whom I was the mediator brought a grandma to the mediation, which was like an unexpected part of the scenario, which was not really written in there. From your experience, are there any drawbacks or dangers in using those role plays?
Well, those types of roles. See, what could happen is if you make it too realistic, and you have people that have suffered trauma or any emotional setbacks, and it triggers that, you're going to have participants creating a situation where it could get out of hand. So I'm talking about, areas where there might be criminality or assault or anything that is post-traumatic syndrome types of things. So I call it pseudo-reality. I remind participants, I remind everyone that my role plays actually are quite real, and I have to remind them about that they're fictional, they're not real, they didn't happen. I almost have to say that almost every hour or so to remind everybody to get back into it, because I think sometimes, and I've seen it, people really get emotional and frustrated when things don't remind them of situations in their own lives, kind of a self-reflection. So they could have some psychological effects, and you might be liable, actually. That's why I sign a disclaimer that you might be liable for any negative effects. So you have to be really careful about that.
So these pseudo-reality role plays that you just described, I understand that you've actually developed your own specific method for how you have your students go through them, right? Could you tell us a little bit about each of these steps? And when we were talking off air, I understand that it's step one, you prepare for the pseudo-reality role plays. Step two, you create the pseudo-reality role plays. And then step three, you debrief after the pseudo-reality role play. So when you're training other mediators on how to help people resolve their conflicts and resolve their challenges in their lives, can you elaborate a little bit about why you came up with these 3 steps and how it's worked for you?
Yeah, I've met other mediators that do pseudo-reality role plays, and I've been at conferences. Some have 10 steps and 12 steps, and I like very simple. For me, I teach, soft skills for doing a presentation or a dissertation, and I always say there are 3 steps to a presentation, right? Prepare for the presentation, present, and then talk about the presentation. And go over in as overview. So basically, I follow it a very simple 3-step process. I like simplify things, and so it makes it easier for people to understand. Because to tell you the truth, I'm still learning, and I've been doing this for 20 years. It's always a learning process. I'm always tweaking it. I'm always changing it. I'm creating role plays now for a niche area that is new to me. So I'm always learning while I'm creating these. So I boiled it down to 3 steps. And the first step, I call it, as you said, prepare for the pseudo-reality. So so the first thing you need to know is how much do the participants know about the topic. So if I have, let's say, a conflict, let's say I'm doing a police union, okay? Which is very, I'm hoping to do something like that for a police union with regards to situations for police brutality and all the rest of it, how to deal with situations, or even an art dispute. How much do the participants know about the topic? You need to, and how much do I know about the topic? I might have to do more research. Do the participants have strong views? Do you know enough about the subject to do a scenario? So also, I also give them the role play so they are comfortable with the role. If they're not happy with the role, I get them to switch roles. I have to remind them that it's fictional in nature. It's never happened. And I have to remind the purpose of the role and ask and get feedback from the participants if they see any bias about the way I wrote the role, or they see any bias. Because bias is subjective. So I could be creating a scenario and they could say, Thomas, this role play is completely biased. They might see things I might not know. So there's a lot of, it's just like, when you're doing mediation, you do a pre-mediation and you want to resolve all those things before you get down to the actual role plays. So I think there's a lot of work involved in doing that. And I think that often is overlooked in the mediation trainings that I've seen, that they don't vet, the mediation with the mediator, the learners or participants.
And this is the preparation. Then when you create, what do you concentrate on step 2, creating the pseudo-reality role play?
Yeah, this is the fun part. So I basically get a story, and I use that story that is very close to what I want to integrate into my role play, and use that as the baseline. So it could be newspaper. I would look at project planning. Maybe surprising the participant with a news flash, like a fake news flash that's similar to what you've done before, some new information, a pre-planned crisis a crisis that could be easily resolved, depending on their level, or something that's maybe impossible or never been resolved. Sort of mix it up. So you want to maybe integrate some props. For example, create fictional newspaper clippings. Maybe a bulletin, like create a video that a news flash. CNN just has a news report. Maybe have some maps that are altered and kind of quasi real and similar to what might be on your baseball, that are compatible with your pseudo reality. So basically, you want to make it real up to the level where it's not confused as I know this is fake, or this is too real. I'm having some issues here. So you need to strike that balance of actually creating the role play.
Okay, so you prepare for it, you've created it, and you obviously go through it. And the last step is debriefing the pseudo reality role play. First off, how long does a typical role play last, and then what happens next?
That's a good question. Like role plays could last 30 minutes, some 2 hours, 3 hours. Some might take three-day workshop just for a role play. So it really depends. You could do a whole workshop on one role play. So it just depends on what you want to do. You asked how long it lasts, and I missed the other point.
Yeah. Typically, how long does a role play last? Well, you've kind of answered. I mean, you said it might last minutes, but it might last days as well, right?
That's right. Yeah. So basically, it depends on it. And the last part of the is actually my favorite, is the debriefing. Yeah. And that's where I learn and I get feedback, and I find that process really incredible, and people really contribute for me to, not for my benefit, but also for their benefit on what they got out of it. And sometimes it's very emotional, the gratitude and the feedback that I get. It's really, really, it really touches my heart as far as the benefits. You can see some people crying and some people just very appreciative of going through such a role play and learning a lot, not only for themselves in learning mediation, but actually seeing the other perspective. It might be, some conflict in the world, and they might see the perspective of the other side where they never saw it before, which is part of our job as mediators, to see the other perspective. So for me, the debrief is kind of a way for me to make constant changes after each role play, to make improvements, to get feedback. Okay, and then also we talked, did we do role identification? Did we not really behave in the way that a real situation would be? Did we overreact? Is it, was it only just a game sentiment, therefore not really of a, serious investment of their time? Is it too close to reality? And like I said before, you're going to get issues when it's too close to reality. I created a role play that was so close to reality that I had to stop. And we had to actually stop the whole workshop. It was just too emotional. So, I'm learning to tweak it. So it strikes a balance. So I do various kinds of role plays. Like I said, I'm doing new ones that I've never created before involving art, but it's the same thing, and with art disputes and things like that, and now with cryptocurrencies and such. I created role plays in the aviation industry for crisis management. That's why I came to Vietnam. I was invited to do role plays for the aviation industry here in Vietnam, because there were some threats in the aviation industry that were concerning. So we had to teach pilots and air traffic controllers how to deal with crisis. And one of the benefits was that's how I settled here in Vietnam. My wife is an air traffic controller. She was one of my students. So that's what got me here. So it's like I said, it's a very interesting area to be in, designing role plays. And I do them for a mediation training, mediation tournaments, mock mediations for universities. So I get invited all the time, especially now that my students won the gold medal at the Singapore convention. I cannot go to these mediation trainings now, but a lot of them are done online, which is okay. And you have to create them in a different way, so they work online, because using what you do in a workshop doesn't really work 100% the same way on a Zoom workshop.
So how could you give us any specific example of the role plays you made on the topics taken from actual headlines that you used for mediation training, and what sort of appreciation and reception did it get? And
actually,
also, one question: yes. How many
yes.
people do you, on average, need for a role play? If people want to try, how many of them would you suggest that should gather together just to go through something?
It's just like Mac's question. It varies. It could be like minimum 4 to up to 15 to 20, maybe more. So it varies. But you mentioned what kind of headlines did I follow? Well, it's very funny. When I first came to Vietnam, I rented a big house. And everybody thought I was a rich man. But what I did was I rented each floor. And people were coming in to rent one of the units, and they would come in with horror stories about their landlord tenants. So I discovered all of a sudden I became like a landlord tenant lawyer for just my building. And I used all those role plays because here in Vietnam, there's huge landlord tenant disputes. And so I did a workshop for specifically landlord tenant disputes, and they actually VTV television aired it live on, not live, but they aired it on television. So that was my first year here. So I created not specifically headlines, but headlines that were happening in real time where I was living in this building. And so I realized there was I did role play specific for the benefit of expats living in Vietnam, dealing with landlord and tenant issues. So that was real headlines that were really happening, and people coming in and giving me their issues. So and it was very well received.
So everything that we're doing, all this training, all of these role plays are all for the goal of perfecting us to be better mediators, so that we can
Correct.
help resolve our potential clients' problems.
Mhm.
All right, that's it for today. And so, Thomas, as usual, want to thank you for your thoughts, and always learn something new every time. And anybody out there who's listening or watching, make sure that you follow instantmediation.com, subscribe to the YouTube channel, follow us on Twitter. So we're here. We'll be bringing back Thomas for other recordings. And if you are interested in mediation or want to contact Thomas, then we've put his information at the description below and on the screen along with his website. So that's it for now, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks,
See you.
Mac. Thanks,
Thank you so
Natalia.
much. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity.